Coming to you from the LoadingReadyRun orbiting underground moon base, it's the LRRcast. That's this.
Hooray!
This thing. Dis
Wait,
you.
we're on the internet?
Dis us.
Hi, Mom.
And so today we decided that we would talk about some job-related, I guess. No, I was going to say
Catastrophes.
I was going to
Yeah.
say catastrophes, but maybe that's too strong a word.
Yeah.
Stananks.
Yeah, just,
What's
you
the name?
It's from Homestar. It's
okay.
not quite a mistake, but it's something that went very wrong.
know,
Errors
just,
were committed.
just the little things about your job that make you think in the morning, maybe I should just drive into a telephone post instead of going into work.
How do you guys
Unless
feel?
the problem was that somebody drove into a telephone post.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, somebody else just couldn't take it anymore, and you're like, man.
So
How do you guys feel about chip oil?
chip
Ooh.
oil.
Chip oil.
I'm fine when food is cooked in it, less fine when it's anywhere other than, this story, yeah.
I feel like I'm happy that my relationship with chip oil is that sometimes food arrives at my table that was previously cooked in it, but I have never had to actually have a direct relationship with it.
Yeah.
And I feel that's like a positive thing.
So,
Yeah, kitchen staff stories. I remember working in a kitchen.
the logistics of a kitchen can sometimes just maneuver people into injury and mess and horror.
I feel like that's an excellent.
I may be exaggerating
that-
how bad this was, but it wasn't good.
That's an excellent opening statement for the personal injury lawyer defending the restaurant. Like, the logistics of a kitchen can sometimes maneuver people into situations that are not as safe as they could be.
So we're blanking names and businesses and stuff.
Oh,
here, right?
yeah.
I used to work for a Greek restaurant, and I was the dishwasher there, and the front staff did all the cooking stuff. So the thing with the deep fryer is you need to keep it running right up until close time, because there could be some jackass who comes in at like 6:59 and is like, "I want calamari right now."
And it takes a
Like,
long time
okay.
to heat up, right?
Yeah,
Well,
because,
heat up
because
and cool down.
to heat up and cool down takes a long time because it's like, I don't know, 4
gallons of oil.
Yeah, a lot of oil. So it needs to be maintained at a very specific temperature, and you need to sustain that till the restaurant is closed. Then you turn it off. And then in a blitz, you clean the kitchen and go the hell home. The oil does not have a lot of time to cool off during that time. And the way ours was set up, I don't know how this is with other ones. It was like a basin that was sort of like angled, and then it had 2 handles made of stainless steel that you would lift it out, take it to the back, and filter it to get all the like detritus and stuff out, because you use the chip oil for like a couple of weeks maybe. And as you might expect, that sort of thing gets like hot and slippery, being
Yeah.
full of oil.
The terrifying idea of lifting a vat
Yeah,
of
you
hot
have
oil.
you have to lift a shifting liquid weight from an awkward angle that is lubricated. I think I did it once, and I was so fucking scared because it was just like you do it very slowly and precisely, because if you tip it, the whole like balance shifts, and then if you compensate, it'll shift again.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't want to do that with a container full of, like, water.
Oh yeah, that's like, oh shit, the water's everywhere. So I was washing dishes and I heard a clamor in the front of the restaurant, and I came out to a grease slick and our fry cook going like this. So yeah, he took a spill, it took a spill, it spilled on him. I think 2 guys went off with him to the hospital. I think he got off with like 2nd-degree burns, which is better than 3rd.
Yeah.
But
Is it? I always forget which direction burns go.
First degree is like sunburn.
Is like singed. Second degree is like
It's the opposite of murder.
yeah.
Yeah. Second degree is like blisters.
Yeah, blistering. Third degree is like cooked flesh.
Yeah.
Great.
I think like fourth degree is like charcoal. So
Yeah.
So they buggered off, and we were left to clean up like all this oil that was everywhere. It just, oh god.
I'm just imagining the getting the cloth and cleaning it off, and then you wring the cloth back into the oil.
It's like, it's fine, we'll just filter it again. But
Yeah.
it was grody, and we were there for hours and hours and hours trying to get this crap off the floor.
See, like,
How long before the guy actually came back to work?
I feel like it was probably a few weeks, more like a couple months.
yeah, that's
So-
horrifying. No, kitchen work is like shockingly dangerous.
It's shockingly dangerous, and just like there's so much that can go wrong. Tip generously.
Yeah.
No, I mean it.
Yeah.
Like,
Danger pay.
Yeah. Working in a kitchen when I was a teenager is the reason why I tipped generously. Not only out of like empathy for the staff, but also I have a very simple rule, which is I am not rude to anyone who handles my food out of line of sight.
that's good
That's
philosophy.
a very simple rule,
It's
and
very
it's
simple.
shocking the number of people who don't follow it.
So it's like, I demand you go fix this, you dumb
Well,
shit.
the
It's
thing
like,
with the tipping, though, is that it's at the end of the meal, right? Ideally, so as long as you're not a regular there, ideally you can get away.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair enough.
But, yeah.
Because I remember, like, at the restaurant I worked at, we had the deep fryers with a spigot at the bottom that you could use to drain the oil.
gross.
But
Practical.
yeah, definitely practical. The problem was, like, I just remember, like, occasionally they would clog, and so you would have the fry cook just being like reaming them out with like a piece of wire, trying to be like, no, like wanting to open the clog, but on the other hand also not wanting to open the clog because it was followed by a rush of like oil.
Gross.
Yeah.
Super grody.
And then I remember also one time the grill cooks were changing the grease trap, were emptying the grease trap, and pulled it out and dumped it on the floor. Right, and the protocol is like,
Oh man.
And
See,
that's
like-
because the problem is that's all
yeah, that's
like,
all the rancid
it's like
stuff.
grease is nasty, but that's the stuff that they took out of the grease.
Yeah, it's
were-
the stuff they've been scraping off the grill.
all these dreadful memories are rushing back to me.
Yeah, so like they got it cleaned up, most of it, right? And then they spread salt over it.
Salt the earth.
Well, I mean, like you have to work in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Because it was during like
Right, yes. No, that was the
like,
secret tech in the
Salt
kitchen.
so you could walk on it.
yeah,
Yeah, see, other things that completely have slipped my mind that I remember now is that, like, on greasy floors, they'll have a bucket of salt that you just, like, sew on the floor so people don't slip and break their necks.
yeah, but like it still gets saturated with grease,
Yeah.
right? And will shift around a bit.
Yep.
Which you forget about because most of the time you can walk on it, except when you're doing what I was doing, which was dish runs when I wasn't super busy. So, like, going from the dish pit to the kitchen with stacks of, like, large dinner plates and then slipping in a pile of grease
Gross.
while
So,
carrying
'cause-
a stack of, like, 15
Oh.
dishes that shatter and land on you.
That's,
And then you
that's-
sprain your wrist.
Oh.
Because there's
While
the
your,
like
while your manager is like, yeah, so we have to file a workplace incident report if you go to hospital. But you're feeling okay, right?
Jesus.
And you're like 16.
You're like, yeah, I'm fine. Fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, I can keep working.
Good. See to it that you
Yeah,
do.
yeah, keep working then. Because we'd hate to, this to become a thing.
Jesus.
oh man
Being
the
exploited.
Yep.
yeah it's the putting the salt down works great right up until the point where the salt becomes millions of teeny ball bearings.
Yeah.
It becomes much worse.
Yeah, which was actually leads into an apt description of my other job where mishaps were common, which was working on a paving crew as when I was like late teens, 18, 19, going to school, and I was employed by the ministry as part of like a field lab on various job sites during the
Okay.
summers. And like you think of asphalt, right, as the stuff that you lay down on the pavement, right? It's kind of like a semi-fluid, right?
Right.
Kind of like a, I don't even know how to describe it, really. But, you know, it's like hot tar that you pour out, right? Except that it's actually made up of millions and millions of tiny pebbles covered in oil, right? So you have to be like, you have to take the gravel out of the ground, and then you have to crush it. And it's all like extremely tedious, mind-numbingly boring work. Doubly so if you're the one responsible for taking samples from the road, or from the crusher, and counting the number of rocks that have been crushed in a sample size.
Oh, wow.
Literally. Like, you take a random sample of the aggregate, and you go 1, 2, 3.
That sounds like the job that they give the new guy.
It is.
Like, what was it?
It's the we want you to quit job.
The snipe hunt or whatever. Like, it's
Go get me some windshield fluid.
Yeah, that's the one.
Headlight fluid.
Headlight fluid. That's the one.
You're basically one step away from literally like counting grains of sand on a beach.
My job was that job also involved washing dirt.
What are you left with?
It's funny you ask. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Here's the thing about how pavement works. You take gravel, you crush it, right? And then you coat it with bitumen, right? The problem is if there's...
You coat it with what?
Bitumen.
Bitumen.
Yeah, which is like
Bitumen.
crap, basically. Like, it's whatever the oil companies don't want.
Oh, okay.
It's like viscous black tar. If there is clay in your ash or in your aggregate, that absorbs water, and it swells and decreases, and like you wind up with a lot of potholes, and you know, it dramatically decreases the lifespan of your roadways, which if you're a geotechnical engineer is something you care profoundly about and nobody else gives two shits about. And so you have to take your sample, weigh it, wash it, by which I mean you put it in a big mixing bowl and you stir it with water until the water runs clear. Like, you know, a clear beach.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you
wash out all the clay.
all anything that's below a certain size, basically.
Or absorbs water.
Right.
So you're left with very fine sand and rocks, and it's, you know, it's very clean looking in a way that you understand clean to be. And then you dry it in an oven, and the next day you come back and weigh it again, and it has to be like, you know, below a certain threshold of mass has to have not disappeared.
And so that gives you an idea of the amount of clay that's in the sample.
So my job for a couple of summers was get dirt, wash dirt, weigh dirt, sift dirt, count dirt, dry dirt, burn dirt, re-burn dirt.
So you didn't burn it enough to get the job quite done.
Yeah, because then you also have to take samples not only from the crusher, but from the paver, and then also from the road itself, where you go and drill a core sample into the road and take it back and break it up with a hammer and then put it into an incinerator, which burns off all the asphalt.
So is that's to make sure that somehow between so that the aggregate that you weighed and washed and then weighed and washed when it went onto the... It's to make sure that somehow it didn't turn into different stuff in the process of coming out of
And while you're doing this, you have other people screaming at you that they need the sample that they just dropped off now. Done now. And it's like, there's a 24-hour workup period for this test. And they're like, I don't care, I need it in an hour.
You can't have it in an hour.
It's like if you...
It's impossible.
It's like, then you should have given it to me 23 hours ago.
Yeah, it's like, I would love to be able to complete this test in an hour, dude.
Yeah, I could go home.
Yeah.
If that was the case.
And that's just when things are going well.
Yeah.
Like, my most vivid memory of that job was getting out to the job site at 4:30 in the morning in this bright, clear blue sky. It was a mountain pass highway.
Here we go.
And it was just like crisp and clean. And I get out there with the senior lab tech in the highways truck, and there is a contractor tanker truck out there that's used to spray the sealant layers between layers of asphalt.
Right.
And the vent at the top is open, and there are flames shooting out of it. And the driver of the truck is just running around in circles outside of the truck, looking for somebody else, trying desperately to make eye contact with somebody who can help.
But nobody else seems to be terribly concerned.
Everyone's
about this.
It's like shit's on fire, yo.
Yeah. And I look at the senior lab guy because nobody else seems terribly concerned about it. And I say, "Is that normal?" And he just looks at it and he says, "Round here it is."
It's like you've seen the IT crowd or the IT crowd,
yeah.
where there's like a fire, and Moss is like, "Oh, fire! Yikes!" and then sort of pushes it away and like sends an email to the fire department. He's like, "Fire, please send help." Okay, and then just like gets back to work while there's fire going on in the foreground.
Wow. Anyways, it didn't blow up and nothing seemed to happen, so I guess it was fine.
Probably. That segues neatly into
Oh no!
a technical no, this isn't fire-based, but it is like catastrophic equipment failure, because sometimes the solutions devised by companies and engineers and so forth are a little more complicated than they're worth. I spent many years working as a show technician, which is essentially a local roadie. Like I don't travel. I never at any point traveled with bands.
And
I did the same work,
right,
for hire at a variety of different venues. I would do rock concerts, trade shows.
And it was sort of
events.
Set up and tear down as opposed to actually like operation during the show. Right?
Yeah, I was essentially a case monkey. I did some of the wiring work. We would show up, roll all the cases out of the truck, set up the speakers, set up the lights, run the cable, and then I would go home and then come back maybe a day or a week later and then put it all back in the truck and like clean the vomit off and stuff like that. Actually, no, clean the dead rat out. That happened once. There's like a case that's like, there's a dead rat in here.
Was that in there when you got it?
No, this is when we came back. Sorry, brief segue before I get into this.
I like the. It's like, so you pick up the case, you clean the dead rat out. It's like, what, the dead rat?
There was
kid. There's always a dead rat. Okay?
I'll tell you, it was very hard work, but like there was never a dull moment in that job, and you'd meet very interesting people, like the forklift operator, who was a very rotund fellow, and everybody called him Peaches. And I was like, why did they call him Peaches? And he bent over, and I realized why.
Yeah.
It's just like a Georgia peach. It was interesting. Anyways, I was on a site for a concert that was taking place at a racetrack up island, actually. And there's a lot of different ways you can set up a stage. A lot of the times you'll just put in decking, which is like these steel-framed, wood-topped decks that have legs of various lengths, and you just like lock them together and then like put a skirt around it, and there's a stage. Other times when you have less provision for those sort of logistics, you can get a stage truck, which is literally a transformer.
Okay.
It's a transformer. It looks like a tractor trailer, and then it like folds open and like all this shit comes out and it becomes a complete stage.
Oh, okay.
With all
wow.
sorts
Neat,
of
neat,
yeah,
neat.
no, it's
I thought you meant it was like just like an electrical transformer the size of a truck.
It transforms from a truck into a stage.
I feel like less transformer and more like, you know, like the Barbie van.
Yes, actually, yeah, a lot like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you were like passing by and you saw one of these operations, you'd be like, "Oh, that's so cool, so high tech." It's sketchy as fuck. It's like, like imagine how a cheap knockoff transformer is built.
Right.
It'd be like this, only with like steel.
Right.
And the entire the hydraulics for the whole thing are run off a 2-stroke engine that's on the side, and the operator is just sort of like going like this. And the way it works is, he has to slowly open it up in a very, very specific sequence, and then the crew has to pull out all of the the logistics, which is to say that like the poles and various other things, and they have to connect them and then like very gradually assemble this. Like half of it is just legwork and the other half is just like, you know, that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had seen how exactly this happened, but the stage that we worked on was so badly designed that as it was extracting itself, it sheared off its own hydraulic valve.
Oh, whoopsie.
And it was like gushing like fuchsia pink hydraulic blood everywhere. And we're like, huh. It's like, just one of these struts had like gone up and like some part of the other, like of the rest of the stage has been like, pink, like chopped it off, just like, psh, like, So it was hurry up and wait for like 3 hours until they found like, I think this was on a Sunday, and they're like, we need to find a hydraulic engineer to fix this.
The problem with something like that is that it's like all the people who are dealing who are working the thing, like even the guy who's like working the engine doesn't actually know anything about
and there's
hydraulics.
No way, and there's no way to do it manually. Like the shit's broke.
And there's no way to, and especially with hydraulics, like once it is, once there's a mess up in the line, everything goes down, right? Like you can't, the whole point is the entire thing is under equalized pressure.
Yeah, but like those,
so as soon as it's like, we're totally screwed.
Those things scare the shit out of me. They seem like one of those things that are just like barely within safety parameters, and they're like a maze of pinch points and just like hinges and shit, and you're like relying on the person who,
and then you run
and then you run all sorts of electrical
then
stuff
you run
through
10,000 amps through it.
Yeah,
it's all good.
God. Oh yeah, like that kind of behind the scenes stuff gives me so much more appreciation for, was it the Van Halen setup contract that everyone talks about, where it's like, and there will be a bowl of brown M&Ms with all the, or a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown M&Ms picked out of it.
Yeah.
Well,
which was like a diagnostic for them.
Yeah, like whether you get the roadie crew actually gives a shit.
Yeah, whether they paid attention to, like, if they didn't pick out all the brown M&Ms, they probably didn't hook up any of the electrical shit correctly either.
Yeah.
Which is the really dangerous thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's also that thing, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but, I used to work at a museum design company, but one of the things that they would do is, you pick up sort of, there would be like big museums, but there's also be like little jobs.
Right.
That it's just like, just like a memorial plaque for something or whatever, right?
Right, okay.
And, there's always these like, you always, every once in a while, like the news media will get a hold of like, a budget or like a story, someone will catch a hold of a story about this, and they'll be like, this plaque cost the city $500,000.
Right.
And it's a piece of, plastic with some writing on it. I could make that for $50.
Right.
What the hell, guys?
Yeah.
Right. And, and it's always this idea of sort of, government waste. And that working in that kind of environment really gave me an appreciation for the ramification, or the other thing you get all the time is like a company or like a university or something redesigning their logo, and it's like, this logo isn't that impressive.
Yeah, why did it cost $1 million to redesign this logo?
And it's like, it's like the ramifications of some of these things. Like, for instance, when you're doing these, we had to do these panels that were like going to be going around a telephone pole. So there it would be like 6 inches out from the telephone pole.
Right.
So just the like, okay, so we're gonna make panels that go around these telephone poles. How? Well, I don't know. We'll get a piece, some sort of piece of metal or something that'll fit around. How does it attach to the pole? It's like, so you have to. It's like, so you have to have design drawings for how the thing is actually going to work.
Yeah.
Who's going to print the thing? Can they print on a curved surface?
Test
Do we have to
make sure it works?
Make sure it works. Can we print it flat and then bend it? Will bending it break whatever printing thing we did? And then there's the whole like, how far out from the pole does it stick?
Right.
is this going to be a liability problem if somebody like bends down, then gets up and whacks their head on this stupid thing?
Right.
Is there then there's the like all these ramifications, and there's all that stuff. Then there's actually the like fun part of the graphic design for how to do the pole and various experts they need to get on that.
There's a lot of hidden work.
People need to get archival photographs, drum scanning archival photograph. My favorite one is, so for those of you who don't know, so there's a drum scan is a special way of scanning a photograph or a negative, a transparency, where I think you can also, you may be able to do it with regular stuff too, but basically it's called a drum scan because there's a drum and they attach the piece directly sort of on the curved surface. And so it's perfectly, there's no air bubbles or anything. And I think there's actually like a coating even that they put on it. And then the scanner is actually inside the drum and it does it. And it's a way it allows them to do a much higher resolution scan because they can light it. And
see, because that's the way they used to do all scans, was on a huge drum.
And so, but it allows them to do much higher, in the same way that it's like a slide scan. Like if you a lot of consumer scanners these days can scan like transparencies,
right?
Or negatives, but you aren't getting like especially a not before the days of digital. If you have like an old transparency or something or an old negative, the amount of information in that is really, really very high.
Yeah.
The effective resolution of some of those things, if it's a good quality one, can be it's order of dozens of megapixels.
Yeah, because it's like determined by the grain of the film,
right? Which
is measured in like angstroms, right? like well, not literally angstroms, but definitely on like the micrometer scale.
And so a lot of the time when we're doing these, because we're doing these things where they're like it's a historic photograph of people standing around doing something, and we're blowing it up to 4 feet across,
right?
From a negative,
right?
And it's like, okay, it's like they've shown us that they have the photograph. And we're like, great, you've got the picture. You send us the thing, we've got it. We can lay it up for position. But you guys have got to go back to get your original. You got to get your original negative from your archives. You got to drum scan it.
Going.
And they're like, really? We have to drum scan it? That's really expensive. We're like, yes, it's really expensive because they're scanning like a 1-inch square at like 1,000,000 DPI.
Yeah.
As opposed to a piece of paper at 1,000 DPI.
This is the point where they're like, but you just sent us a JPEG that looks fine.
Oh.
No, this is the part where they go, okay, fine. We'll spend a couple $100 to drum scan this thing. A few days later, we get back we get back the file, which is a drum scan of a printout of their JPEG.
Oh,
mother of God!
And it's like, my God, I have never seen the pixels of your printer so
that
incredibly high
makes
resolution.
My brain hurt.
And it's like, does nobody while they were doing that, were they like, well, these guys are fucking stupid. I can't believe they want us to do this, but okay.
That's like all these fucking
it.
clients we used to get when I was working for a design agency who'd send us their logo at like 100 pixels across, and we would have to reverse engineer it using vector graphics and
actually,
then
redraw their logo.
Yeah, we would redraw it from scratch and then play our favorite game, which was guess the font.
Oh.
And it was just like, you had to do this, and then like these pinheads think that it's just like, now there's a precedent set for us sending them like extraordinarily low res images.
Yeah, and like this is why things are like I remember this summer for Pride in Victoria, right when they painted the crosswalks with in rainbows, and people were making a big deal of like how the city had spent like, was it $10,000 or $100,000?
Right.
They had some figure about how much it cost them to paint rainbow crosswalks for Pride.
Yeah.
And it's not like that is just the cost of having a road crew for a day.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the city budgets that to employ those people for one day.
Doesn't matter what they're doing.
Doesn't matter what they're doing. That was an existing cost.
Right.
That painting the thing was their job for the day, so technically it cost them that, but the city was paying them that anyways.
Yeah.
Because
There's just there's a certain amount of like
Yeah.
infrastructure cost.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so I mean that's one of those things that you that it's interesting to experience that stuff, you know, from the other side, you know, from the, you know, either behind the in the kitchen or you know the building the
Yeah.
tech stuff, but it's
Yeah.
Speaking of museums, I was on a gig once at a large museum in Ontario, and we were putting together. There's some sort of event. I don't even know what it was. Half the time, I had no idea what was going to happen eventually. But we had a guy up in a scissor lift, which, if you've seen them, is 4 teeny wheels and then like
the best stories always start with a guy up
a
in a
thing like
scissor
that.
lift.
Yeah,
and then
or in a
there's like
cherry
and
picker.
then there's a bucket up at the top. And he backed into one of the lamps on the cornices or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those moments where they're just like, I really hope that's not an actual antique,
Yeah.
because here we are in a museum.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, was
can
that
you just give us a heads up what's
It's like,
irreplaceable and what's not?
It's like,
Yeah.
oh dear. Zoom booms are scissor lifts are fun. This is actually a good thing to talk about, is like safety provisions.
There's that thing that you're not supposed to drive it around
So
while it's
okay,
scissored, right?
you're not supposed to drive a scissor lift around when it's up there, but everybody does that,
Right.
And it's not
because
like
that's when it's useful.
and it's not like the controls. I mean, if it was seriously a thing that you couldn't do,
well, technically speaking, it's stupid.
they would
Yeah.
no, but like it
But
would be
It would
be
lock it
incredibly
out.
easy to lock out the controls when it's up. But they know that that would piss everyone off.
Yeah, nobody would buy their product because
Exactly.
it's one of those policy things where it's like you're supposed to lower it completely, reposition the cart, raise it, do your work.
Yeah.
No
Well, I
one
mean, like-
does that.
Yeah.
They raise the cart, and if they need to adjust it, they'll like move it forward a bit. And it's very nerve-wracking at the top because it does have a certain amount of play to it.
Yeah. Well, because like, there's not an insignificant amount of weight suddenly now, like 30 feet up, right?
See,
Yeah,
if
kinda like
you're
top-heavy.
if you're smart, you at least put in the outriggers, because it does actually have a fairly small footprint. So here's the other thing: is you are supposed to wear a fall arrest harness and be clipped to the lift.
Yeah.
No one does that
Right.
because
Again, the cable
Well,
always gets in your way.
the problem. It's not the problem that the cable gets in the way, because the philosophy people have is like, if this tips over, I do not want to be attached to it.
Right. Like
So it's like,
the danger that stops is you falling out of the lift.
yeah,
But that's actually not something that's likely to happen. It's much more
It is, but I think it's just sort of like, which danger am I trying to avoid? Both of them are bad. Because if the lift tips over, the absolute last thing you want to have happen is be attached to it in a way that you
Right.
can't quickly remove yourself. So what you would have happening on job sites, and like, I won't say which which business and people were doing this, but I'm given to understand that was just common practice, is people will wear harnesses and not clip it off to anything. It's like essentially for show. Sometimes they'll clip it off in a certain situation if they're like out of the bucket working on something, but it's just sort of like, you sort of play fast and loose with the safety protocols, to
Yeah.
get the job done, which is something that I'm kind of glad that I don't really do anymore, and I never really did, because I was like, life's too short to, be doing that sort of shit.
Yeah. Like,
Well,
that's something I was actually really happy
very,
with.
very much shorter.
Yeah.
Working in actual chemistry labs where they
as
actually
opposed
do
to like field stuff.
They do
Well,
take that stuff seriously?
yeah, where they do take that stuff seriously, because
That's
it's not
good.
just a matter of like, you might fuck up the test. It's like, this is, rich in transition metals, which are highly toxic, and this will smell really badly if you spill it on anything, and this is extremely flammable, and this is corrosive. And there's ways in which chemists play fast and loose with things, but there are ways in which they definitely do not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right.
the trick with chemistry too, with some of the stuff that you work with, is that something might spill or whatever, something bad, and you won't you won't know that something bad has happened, or that a chemical you shouldn't, that something bad was, everything seemed fine 20 years down the road is when it shows up as being a problem, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that can happen, and it can also be like a thing. Oh God, it happened in one of the undergraduate labs where in the previous laboratory section, somebody was working with lithium, right? Because they were doing a Grignard reaction, which is like a Nobel Prize winning reaction, and it's a good way of like getting two things jammed together. But for part of it, you have to use like this metal, right, which reacts violently with water.
Right.
And they were like, you have to cut it to get a nice, clean, bright surface where it hasn't been oxidized. And then you put it in the thing, and, it happens. But what they had done is they had cut off a bit and cut off another sliver that didn't go into the reaction, just sat in the fume hood, and they missed it. Right? And next section comes along and, like, wipes out the fume hood with a damp rag and throws it in the garbage.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and then it's like, shit's on fire, right? Why? Why is shit on fire?
That sounds exactly like what happened in my dad's science class once, because they were doing a demonstration with, I think it was phosphorus, which it's a metal, right?
No, phosphorus is like
it's a
no, it's
no, it's not.
It's just like a mineral.
Yeah.
Well, not a mineral, but it's a thing.
But
it's a solid.
It's so flammable it ignites at room temperature, so it has to be like samples of it have to be kept under water. And so the teacher like cut off a strip of it to like let it dry out and burn, and wiped his knife on the edge of the trash can.
Yeah.
And like later in the class when they were working, it was just like, shit's on fire, yo.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Like working in a chem lab introduces you to a whole new way of being careless.
Yep.
Right.
Every job has, well, it's interesting. Every job has ways of being careless, and then the sort of like corresponding disasters that can happen. It's like not so bad in something like design, where it's just like, oh, we just like cost a lot of time and money. What a drag, And
or
then
it's
in,
like
stagecraft, it's like, oh, hospital time.
Yeah. Or it's like, you're working in, God, I used to work at a halfway house for youth and minors coming out of a juvenile detention. And on the weekends, we would take them to one of the local planer mills where they would do cleanup, right? Because, good, honest work. And one day we went there on the weekend, and there was a new dent in the door to one of the planers where nobody was killed.
Oh, good. That's good.
What had happened was one of the blocks of wood going through the planer had gotten stuck.
Oh, good.
For a little while.
And then it
fired out and put a dent in a steel door.
Yep.
And just exploded into splinters.
God, to this day, I'm terrified of table saws. Like, they just scare the living shit out of me.
Right. Like, and like industrial, like you have your locks, right?
Yeah.
You go and you go to the power bar, right? And you shut down the power to whatever it is you're working on, and then you lock it out.
Yeah.
And only you have keys to your locks.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be like the safety measure. Only when you need to do emergency stuff, nobody does that. And that's how that one guy got locked in the oven in that tuna cannery.
I'm sorry, what?
You didn't hear about that a couple of months ago?
No.
It was in the U.S., but a guy got, when you can tuna, you have to, like, heat it up, right, when you're canning things to seal it.
Right.
And he went into the oven to work on something for, like, 2 minutes.
Dear God.
And they're like, oh, weird, the door's open. Shut, turn it on.
That's how Elysium starts.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that, except he didn't get,
Was he killed?
Oh, hell yeah.
Jesus. That's... Fuck.
Wow. I was going to say, I generally have been in, design and kind of stuff, so I haven't been in that dangerous situations. I did do a job shadowing thing at a print house, design place, which usually isn't the place where you have a lot of dangerous stuff.
Except for the paper trimmer.
Except for the paper trimmer. This particular one was a very high, heavy duty one. Which this story is okay. Nobody loses important body parts.
Important.
But
All of them are important.
How important really is a finger?
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme
You
of
have
things.
a bunch of extras. No, but so this is one of these. It is this big old machine, and this is actually talking about the scissor lift thing and how if they really cared, they would
could
lock
cut
it out.
Yeah, lock it out.
These things they do really care. The only way to make it work is the machine physically will not turn on unless the guard is down.
Right.
And you push a button here and a button on the opposite side of the machine.
Okay.
Does this one have a step treadle as well?
Yes. The step is what actually makes it go. You have
Okay.
to push the two buttons to unlock it, and then the step makes it go.
Okay.
The point being that all of your limbs are occupied by actually making it activate.
so you can't
have,
It's
have
really
anything.
clever.
you
Yeah.
physically can't have a hand inside there.
Right.
The problem is
Oh dear.
when
Well, you still have your head.
well, and also
Just
yeah, it's like I'll hold it. Well, so the problem is when I was there, I was just like there as job shadowing. I wasn't actually like doing any work, but they ran off a big print job, and whatever it was a new paper stock that they hadn't used before or whatever, and they have a really high level, high density, high speed press, offset press. It's going through and it gets quite hot. And when when you do a bunch of printing and you heat the paper up, paper curls,
Okay.
which isn't a big deal, except when you have to slice the paper precision stuff,
Right.
and it's curling. And so you put it into the guy was like, he put it into the chopper thing and he couldn't get it lined up because he would try to flatten it out and then it would always curl back. And so I'm like standing in the corner. I was like, maybe 17 or something. I was like standing in the corner watching as the guy gets like another guy. He's like, okay, gets the other guy to like hold the paper down.
no.
Like deliberately spending great amounts of effort to bypass all the sophisticated
Like
security
safety,
systems.
yeah.
Oh no.
And it went totally fine because they were both obviously
Quite familiar with.
familiar with the machine and keeping very close.
Yeah.
Right. They were
Where-
communicating
where,
and yeah.
where the blade is obvious. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. So the point of all the security stuff is to deal with people not paying attention.
Right.
And so they were paying real close attention, and they did it, and they held it down, and it was fine.
Right.
But it was one of those things where it was
Man,
like, oh dear.
I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast, but your talk about that reminds me of a job that Raymond had. And nothing bad happened, but the equipment he worked with was just like out of a horror movie because the machine you describe is a hydraulic actuated cutter, which is a sort of evolution of paper cutting machines. He worked in a shop that had one that was from the turn of the century, which operated on a flywheel.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous piece of work. It was just like all like wrought iron and like huge frame and like big like crank handles and stuff.
Right.
Do you know how you activated that one? You tripped a lever.
So you could just
Just
like.
bum, 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 bum. And like this guillotine, all it would do is engage the clutch and it would just go wham, and then like complete a cycle. And it was just like this 3-foot long razor blade
Right.
that would just like go through 50 sheets of paper, just like zip. And it's
Or
just like
anything else that happens to be in there.
Yeah.
no. It was loud and frightening, and I was just like, I'm uncomfortable being around this. I just want to like withdraw all my limbs into my body and become an inert sphere and roll away.
Oh.
The
Yeah.
workplace. Fun times.
But like, not that it was all bad, because I remember my job in the kitchen had the first time I was told by like my immediate supervisor, that it was okay not to give a shit.
Was this the fuck it?
Sorry.
No, it was we were super busy, and I was in the station that made desserts and milkshakes and other kinds of things.
Okay.
And I was slammed. Everyone was slammed, right? And I was working away, and I was getting kind of flustered and getting kind of upset because like things were not working out, and I was running out of stuff, and like we were running out of dishes, and like
That sort of upset you get when you're young and you like think that stuff actually like
yeah,
matters
when you think
beyond...
it actually matters. And the head chef was just like, it doesn't matter. I know it feels like it matters, and to a degree it does matter.
But
But
not
it
that
doesn't
much.
matter.
Yeah. It's like the worst case scenario here is like some people don't get food.
Immediately.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah,
It's like, and they're going to yell, like he pointed to the serving staff, right? And it's like, they're going to yell at you.
So
Yeah.
those are good words to live by. It's just like it really doesn't matter that
Like
much.
you can't do anything
Not
about it.
that much.
Like the amount of effort it would take you to noticeably ameliorate the situation is actually beyond your capacity to do.
that's what all the people were saying. Like, okay, look, that truck might be on fire, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really matter.
Like in the great
Yeah.
scheme of things.
Yeah,
Who cares?
we're
man.
all gonna die, so eventually everyone dies.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Man, okay. You've all worked with chuckle fucks before, right?
Oh, so many of them.
You ever okay,
Okay,
for,
like
for a second
okay.
there, I thought that was like a Chuck
literal
E.
person.
Cheese
Yeah, I
kind
know.
of place.
No, okay. My one, you know the adage about how if you can't tell who the drunk person is at the party, it's
you.
If you can't tell who the incompetent moron is on the workplace,
It's you.
it's you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Man, like have you ever worked with that guy who is just a disaster waiting to happen?
Who's like
And-
enthusiastic
And you're very lucky that you're not around when their luck finally runs out.
yeah.
We had a guy like I'll never forget this, and I'll try to describe it in a way that you can see. He was doing a test rig for a show, and like rigging in the context of show tech is you bolt together a bunch of box truss, which is it's like it's a square structure made out of aluminum tubing that is just made to be like it's like Tinker Toys,
Okay.
only giant and aluminum and load bearing.
And the
Okay.
idea is that
And then you
that's
run
for
it
the
up.
lights.
Yeah, you run it up
Yeah.
on chains, like in a venue where there's only like logistics points that you can like
Okay.
shackle to.
Right.
You run a lighting truss, and that's what you hang all your lights off of in a specific pattern. And you can run like the way they're designed is that you can run like cables through them to a central point and then like down to the floor. They're extraordinarily useful
Right.
and about as lightweight as you can have.
Right. 'Cause
Something
they're-
and
they're
still make it
aluminum.
strong. Like
Right.
one person can pick one up and just carry it around.
Right.
Anyway, he had a line of this, and he had like hung a bunch of lights on it, and it was like bending forward because it was extraordinarily front heavy
Mm-hmm.
with these lighting fixtures. So his solution was to clamp pipes coming out the back using cheese bros, which are a pair of clamps end to end like this.
Okay. Right. Right.
So you like clamp it, and then you'd run these pipes out, and then you put sandbags on the end of the pipes. So,
So
they
he
would
just
like
made a
leave
catapult?
He just made a fucking catapult.
And like, so just hope the sandbags don't roll off. Right.
It was the sketchiest shit I'd ever seen in my life. I was like, and people were just like, "Oh dear God."
So like, one of two things can happen here. Either it just like launches the sandbags, which are probably what, like 150 pounds each,
Probably
or the sandbags,
fall off, and then the whole
yeah,
thing just like
under tension.
it,
right.
it like whips.
It
you know,
snaps forward with these two long pipes
It's
snapping like whip cords at the end.
You know that maybe you're doing something wrong if you notice that you're working on something and everyone in front of you is kind of cleared away.
Yeah, like yeah, you might be doing something wrong if a crowd has gathered 50 feet away from you, and it's just like,
have their cell phones out.
yeah, like you might be making a post in RTIFU.
Yeah. Today I fucked up.
Or somebody else might
Yeah.
be making a
Or-
post
yeah,
about you.
You want a very powerfully competent person doing the rigging for your show. Like, that is not something you like skimp on in the least.
Yeah, like I remember working with this one chuckle fuck who would like on the paving crew, who was just not even a nice guy. He was just this is where he was going to top out, and he was angry about it. And we would just find his shit coming out of the paver on the other end of the road when he was working at like either in the quarry or at the plant where they made the asphalt.
Now you got to be clear here.
Not his shit.
Okay.
Like
His
we would
literal
find,
feces.
no, but we would find like a pair of his sunglasses coming out on the road, right? Or like his work gloves coming out of the paver, because he was just a moron, and they would fall out of his pockets while he was leaning over the plant.
So would
Right,
those be just like
fuck.
baked into the road, or
Yeah.
could you pull those out, pull them out before it happened?
No, they would be stuck into the road because like the asphalt comes out of the paver at like 80% compression, and they run it over with rollers.
So
Right, to
so
compress
is
it
there
down.
there's like some road up in northern BC
As
Yeah,
this
with, like,
guy's-
that has like a large portion of this guy's possessions baked into it.
Whomsoever pulls this glove from this road will be the biggest idiot in Alberta.
Yeah, like, man,
Yeah.
that guy was just.
don't
It's
know.
not an especially dangerous job. It's really not.
As
It-
long as the glove
just
was
made it
empty
dangerous.
when it went into the
Yeah,
thing.
there's no part of that job that should kill you ever, right? Like there's always the horror story about, like the one guy who came in hungover and fell into the plant and all they found was a boot coming out on the road. Right?
Jesus. Or a glove.
Yeah,
Fuck
or a
that.
glove, right? And it's like pretty sure that never happened, right? Like sometimes
That's just there for you to be safer than.
Yeah.
Well, actually, just acceptably safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like conceivably you could burn yourself taking a sample out of the hot asphalt, right, where you're dipping in the can and you're kind of like leaning over the tank,
Yeah.
right? If you don't have like your asbestos gloves on, maybe you like it hurt, right? The same way that like you
Just
could
like in a
burn your-
kitchen.
yeah, you could burn yourself on a hot pan.
You can always tell professional chefs because their forearms have all these burn marks. And you have to look closely because you're like, is that self-harm? No, they're
no,
cooked.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
in
yeah.
a certain
Well,
way,
it's
it
like-
probably is.
It was like when we saw the Indian place who were doing the food
I don't
in
know
the
how
park,
they do that.
like the food in the park, right? And they had their tandoor, which of course is like a very high tech thing because
Well, it's a modern tender
yeah,
oven.
it's a modern tandoor. So it was like this it was an oven, but it was circular, right? And it had a large hollow, but it only had a small portal to the inside, right? And it was lined with asbestos, and it was like a steel oven. And you would just see them like reach in and slap a nan onto the inside of it without really moving their forearm. But they would all have like no arm hair, right? From being like, "Tsrah!"
Yeah.
It's one of those things you learn. It's like Japanese sword sharpeners.
Yeah,
They say it's like I saw an interview with one, and he was saying that's like I cut myself a lot early on, and then you eventually get better at it because like the first couple passes aren't so bad, but it's like when you get to the like polishing, and you use a sharpening stone so fine that you use like a piece the size of a grain of sand. You're just like, fuck.
right. And like 10 minutes later, you're like, there's blood everywhere from something, right?
It's like because it just took off the first few like microns of your
yeah,
finger until it hit a blood vessel.
yeah.
It's one of those ones where if you don't learn the thing right away, then after whatever 1,000 times burning your forearms
Yeah.
or whatever, you learn it eventually.
Yeah, you've just baked on like an integrated leather glove, right? Speaking of like the nth degree of burns
Yeah.
from the first story.
It's just like you just see a charred stump.
Yeah. No, you've just got like a leather greave
Oh
that's
wow!
made out of your or
You just like pull it off like a glove, and
Yeah.
there's just like a skeleton hand. It's like that scene in Terminator. I need you to listen to me very carefully. It's like the workplace.
yeah.
All right. Well,
so like all the
yeah.
all the I think the point being is that all those stories your parents told you, or that you hear about, like, jobs you do when you're young, building character, careful of the character you build. Because you might end up like that, like us, and just incapable of giving a shit.
You'll have a shitectomy.
And it's nice that we don't have some of those old timey jobs. We don't have anymore.
Working down that mill.
Yeah,
Working
well,
mill.
and depends on where you are, but it's nice to know that in our modern era there are still lots of ways to get yourself horribly injured on a job site.
Oh, there's plenty of them.
So anyway, thank you for watching this possibly terrifying episode of the LRRcast.
Yeah.
Hopefully you weren't watching it while operating heavy machinery.
Please
because
don't do that.
That would be dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah, and remember that this podcast, as well as everything on Loading Ready Run, is supported by you, by our Patreon, right down there at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So if you like this and you want to see more of our cool stuff, check that out.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll have to go work down at mill again.
Yeah, and that would
Cam
just
will
be
come
a
home with
bloodbath.
consumption.
Yep. With the black lung.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
We will
Adios.
talk to you next week. Bye.